Hi everyone, it's Steven here, and this time my mom is with me in this video.
Hi, guys.
So, today Mom and I are going to go over a rather serious subject, as you may have read in the title. It's a topic that one of our viewers has requested, and it's something that we feel like needs to be talked about. And that is autism and post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD for short. As you may have noticed, there's not any music playing, there's not any visual effects going on, because unlike other autism topics I've covered in the past, this is one of the more serious and more sensitive subjects. It's not really something to joke around with too much because this is something that can alter someone's life, for a long span of time or even permanently depending on the situation. So we want to make sure to give this topic the respect and attention that it deserves. So, before we get into this, Mom, for those that are new or haven't seen you that much, why don't you give a brief introduction on your expertise on autism and those with PTSD?
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. So, as Stephen said, I am his mom and a mom of another child, or actually adult now, with autism. And so that was my initial introduction. I'm also a registered nurse. I've also been a cub master, and now I'm a CNA instructor. And so, pretty much what that rolls out to is early on in my career, I was already through the fact that I had two children of my own, plus I have some nephews on the spectrum. The the world of autism opened up to me, and so we knew back then a lot of activism needed to be done. And so, through their school experience, through raising the two boys, and then joining Boy Scouts of America, I became the Cub Master for a unit, actually two units, with individuals on the spectrum, as well as some troops. Now, I say spectrum because back in that time, that's what it was. We no longer talk about a spectrum. I'll get to that in a moment. Currently, I am also a registered nurse, and I was actually a registered nurse while that went on. But through my registered nurse experience, I've worked in the emergency room, I've worked pediatrics, I've worked intensive care, home health, and most recently here, I'm actually an instructor to help people to become CNAs or certified nursing assistants.
And some of those have had experience with PTSD before?
Actually, I help some people that have autism to become CNAs, and I have had students who have PTSD or CPTSD, which you'll explain a little bit later.
Right.
And they also are now functioning, working CNAs.
Wow, that's very impressive.
Mm-hmm.
So, before we get into how PTSD affects autistic people, we need to understand these two subjects separately for a bit. So, let's start with a brief explanation of what autism is.
Okay, so autism, there's the way it's classified today is three levels. The first one is considered high functioning autism. That's what we used to call Asperger's. So these individuals have symptoms that are mild. They will display noticeable impairments in their social communication, have difficulty maintaining conversations, understanding nonverbal cues, and developing friendships. That's very hard for them. They want it so desperately, and it's so difficult because they don't understand. They can't read the room. Okay, so they're going to struggle with the social interactions. When do I start talking? When does Stephen start talking?
For a lot of other people, that can come naturally just like that. But, for many autistic people, that's not so easy.
They also exhibit repetitive behaviors, have restricted interests. Their interest could be very specific. So for Stephen, one of the interests we learned early on was cameras. And back in the day, those were the disposable little cameras. Then I bought him a Canon. And then, of course, obviously, as you see today, that interest really took root. And through college, he actually specialized in that, has degrees in it, and has become a award-winning photographer and videographer, as you well know because you're watching his channel. Okay? These individuals can usually function independently with what we call appropriate support. So appropriate support for Stephen, and I'm just going to use him as an example because you know him well, is, he has a job. I have nothing to do with that. He has a car. I have nothing to do with that. He has these videos that he does in this, and the what are those other things you do?
Live streams?
Live streams. Okay, so I have nothing to do with that. But every now and then, maybe a customer or somebody's going to say something to him, or he's going to see something happen, and he may reach out to me. Hey, Mom, I just heard this and I saw this. Why did this happen? Why did they say that? I don't understand. So that's a moderate or a small amount of support that he's going to need. Level 2, moderate autism. This person's going to need a little bit more support specifically to their daily needs. They will have more pronounced difficulties with social communication and interactions. So not only are they having difficulty with reading the room and entering into conversations, but they may not go past the door. They may just kind of want to be part of it. This is the person that wants friends, but they don't go to those events. They won't attend those things that could get them the friendships. Okay? We have more pronounced difficulties with social communication and interaction. They not only can't read the room, they can't read your face. They can't read body language. And it's very frustrating because, they are aware of the deficits. It's not that they don't know. They know that they have those deficits, but they don't know how to break through them, okay? They have an increase in the repetitive behaviors, and their interests are not only specified, now they're getting a little bit more restrictive, and they're preventing them from being able to do things. So like, let's say we're going to take Stephen and let's knock him down a notch. So he had this interest in cameras. Well, if he was not able to take it away from that, the little camera that I gave him, to incorporate the now bigger camera, and then when we went from film to electronic, well, see that if that was a restriction for him, that would prevent him from being able to do these marvelous videos that you are getting to enjoy. Okay? The other part of that is that they will struggle to adapt to changes. Coping with change, unfamiliar situations, surroundings, people, routines really throws these folks for a loop, and they really struggle with it. Okay? Next is severe autism. This is your more severe one. This requires extensive support in all areas of life. Communication, social interaction, daily living skills, limited verbal communications or abilities, or they could be nonverbal, repetitive behaviors, restrictive. So you see everything I'm listing, but now it's more impacting. Okay? They will manifest severe impairment across multiple domains: the social, the communication, behavioral, where is it appropriate to say or do something, as well as adaptive functioning. They have very rigid adherence to routines and rituals, and often require extensive support to meet their basic needs and engage with the world around them. This is someone who might not be able to live on their own. They need somebody there.
So, that's a very good explanation for a basic summary of autism. Now, some of you might be wondering, wait a minute, this channel does content about autism anyway. Wouldn't we already know about this, or some of us would? That is true. However, there is a reason why we are mentioning this. And to better understand that, and the screen brightened up again, sorry.
Wow, guys.
Yeah.
Now, see, if he was level 2 or 3, that would not be acceptable. We'd be redoing this video. We're not redoing the video, are we?
No, we're not redoing the video. Trust me, it's for the best. So, to make sure, to help paint the picture, I should say, now let's go over the next part in terms of what is post-traumatic stress disorder.
Okay, so PTSD. So, whereas autism is something you're born with, okay? PTSD, you weren't born with. You didn't have this early on in the picture.
Yeah,
okay?
Usually this happens after a serious event. Like for PTSD, it's usually like a short-term event, like a car accident, or you have witnessed something really terrible, or something bad really happened to you, like an act of violence. That could leave like a trauma, or in some cases, PTSD.
Right, so the PTSD, the first thing we want you to understand is, so the event happened. The response to it is not always right away, and it is unpredictable. This is a mental health condition, Okay, you're not born with this. You came out. You're doing quite fine, and something happened. It's going to affect how you operate in this world. This will develop after, as Stephen had said, after an experience or witnessing an experience. Some of the symptoms that people who are suffering from this will report is flashbacks, nightmares, severe anxiety, uncontrollable thoughts specific to the event. And this can affect anyone, okay? Whether you have autism or you don't have autism, anyone, unfortunately, can have this. Now, some of the types of reactions that are common that will help your doctors or therapists to tell you, maybe it's PTSD. You're going to have intrusive memories. In other words, you're in the middle of doing something and all of a sudden this thought comes back and it's like, hey, Ellen, do you remember when you saw that lady get hit by that car? And you're like, oh my God, I got to stop what I'm doing. I got to focus on that.
And the thing is, like, this can come out of nowhere. Like, it could be, like, you look at a specific object that could remind you of the incident, or it could be just a feeling that comes out of nowhere.
A sensation, some music, some lighting, it could be anything. Now, the other type of a reaction would be avoidance. So if I know that when I drove on the freeway, that's when that car hit me and it was very traumatic, I'm never going to go on the freeway anymore. I'm going to take all the side streets. The fact that it's going to take me double and triple time to get between my patients, irrelevant. I'm not taking that freeway. Changes in negative thinking and mood. And that is something that is in common with someone on autism systems because
Spectrum,
thank you. The negative thinking and the mood, remember, they're social difficulties and they're trying to fit in, they're trying to find a way, and then this thing is going to stop up and go, stoplight, no, don't do that, no, don't go there. So it makes it harder. Changes in physical and emotion reactions. We all get startled. We all get, somebody comes up and thinks it's really funny. And my boys know not to do it to me because I never thought it was funny. Somebody comes up and goes, boo! I personally, as a child, I remember, and trust me, I didn't have any trauma. I just don't like that, okay? So if someone has PTSD and they didn't like it to begin with, oh yeah, you're really going to enjoy what they're going to do now. The reaction is going to be much more severe. Okay.
Yeah. So something to keep in mind, and this is something that another viewer has requested us to talk about, is that it's not just PTSD. There's actually like different levels. Mm-hmm. There's trauma at the bottom. There's PTSD in the middle, because as you mentioned to me, you can have trauma without PTSD, but you can't have PTSD without trauma. Right. Then there's the next level up. There is complex post-traumatic stress disorder, or CPTSD. Here, you get all the symptoms and effects of PTSD, but then there's some other stuff attached with it, like there's more emotional factors involved, where it's like you are questioning your sense of worth. You have this altered view of yourself, the perpetrator, the incident, or people around you, and you have even more of these negative emotions towards yourself. Like, it could even go as far as losing all confidence, disassociating from people mostly, if not completely, and even hurting yourself too. So CPTSD is the next step up. And the key thing to understand between PTSD and CPTSD is PTSD is due to a short-term event, as we mentioned, a accident, like a car accident, or witnessing an act of violence, or an act of violence done on you. So that short-term event can cause PTSD. But CPTSD is usually caused by a long-term event, like years of, God forbid, domestic abuse, or a series of acts of violence towards yourself, or God forbid, if you were a victim of a long-term crime, or for some people, even going through a war. So with a long-term event, it's going to be even harder to address the issue and, try to get better.
Now, don't forget also, with the CPTSD, these people often will experience what we call flashbacks, something that happened in the past, and I have a taste in it, I have a smell of it, I have a sensation of a feeling. They're also very hypervigilant, and they will have efforts to avoid the distressing reminders of whatever that event was.
And with CPTSD, it's even worse because it's not just one event, it's multiple events or like a long-term event. So it could be
It's a theme what they're trying to run from.
So it could be a number of things that can set them off.
Right. So
well, maybe not set them off, but rather remind them of the events. That's a better way of saying it.
To have them incur the experience again. Okay, so let's now answer the root of the question, Stephen. What was it that started this whole project? And that was, can someone with autism, how does PTSD affect that person as opposed to a neurotypical?
Right. So this was actually the main question that was asked by the viewer in the first place. And that is like, how can PTSD affect autistic people or show up differently in autistic people? Mm-hmm. And the reason we went over a brief description, that's it, of autism and PTSD.
That's the little help he needs from me.
Between autism and PTSD is because you may have seen some overlapping between the two in terms of like disassociation from people, having anxiety problems, or maybe being overwhelmed by the environment around them, mm-hmm. or having a hard time with communications or forming those social connections with people. All of these can overlap with one another. And this in turn, unfortunately, makes it difficult to diagnose PTSD in autistic people because of the overlapping. Mm-hmm. So the reason we brought these two up is to not only go over how PTSD or CPTSD in some cases can affect autistic people, but also to list out the key difference between the two. So it can be easier to point out what it is.
Okay,
so like, for example, is autism, as we mentioned, is lifelong. That is not due to a situation. But PTSD, that's due to an event. Like the PTSD starts at a particular point, not from birth. The other thing is that with autism, when they get overwhelmed with anxiety or social issues, they're usually consistent and predictable. Whereas with PTSD, it's not so predictable. Like, I could be fine one moment, and then the next, just feeling like absolute garbage.
Mm-hmm. So, let's go over some of the shared features. Okay, again, remembering that they're distinct conditions. The most major difference between the two and how this is classified. So while I was helping Stephen to do some research behind this, I was very interested, Stephen, to see some of the statistics that I was able to come across. 32 to 45% of autistic adults, and again, we're just talking about adults at this moment, have PTSD as compared to only 4% of non-autistic adults.
Now, was this like within a control group? Because that's how they usually do it.
Well, I only checked out a couple of references, but just by sheer numbers and percentages, it caught my attention. Because basically what those numbers are telling me, whether they are dead on correct, because, I always watch the morbidity and mortality reports on how many people are being diagnosed with autism. And by the way, folks, did you know the most recent reports state that 1 in every 35 live births results in someone with autism? Think about that. It's concerning. So then when I saw this 32 to 45%, that's a lot of people walking around with PTSD that are on the spectrum. And here's the thing that gets my attention. And I've already noticed it in my own nursing practice and in my teaching practice. I'm having many, many more people that are coming to me because, they want to progress in life. And, thank God, they're all very honest. Not that I can't see it coming at me because I've got so many years' experience, but they're coming to me and they're saying, Miss Ellen, I want to be a nursing assistant. I want to be a nurse, but I don't know how to do this. Okay? They're coming to me with the PTSD, Stephen. And sometimes they'll tell me the event that caused it. And sometimes it's just, they've been autistic. They didn't get that social acceptance. They weren't able to make those connections It's created the scenario, but think about that, 32 to 45% of the people with autism.
So, I did look at a couple of references myself before this recording, and what those references mention is that someone who is autistic could be more likely to suffer with PTSD than neurotypical because of the things we mentioned, like, disassociating with people, having issues with social
The scene is
and
already
communications. There's also like, dealing with anxiety and emotional stuff. So that stuff is
It's
there with
already there.
It's already there with autism. But with PTSD, what happens is that it adds on to it. It can actually make a situation worse. Like an example that Thomas actually mentioned, believe it or not, and he put it so well.
He
He
really
put it
did.
so well. I really want this in the video. Is that one of the examples is that many autistic people or autistic people in general, we have a tendency to hyperfixate or give something an intense focus, be it like, a memory from a long time ago, or like our area of interest, or maybe like something that really caught our eye.
Pokemon.
Yeah, stuff like that. Something that really grabs our attention. But when you add PTSD to the mix, that makes it worse because now we're hyperfixating and focusing on the event in question. We get stuck at this moment.
All the socialization going around here. Do you notice where Stephen is and where the socialization's happening?
Right, as I was saying, but it's like we get stuck at this one moment where everything else in the world is moving on, but we're stuck in this moment and can't get unstuck.
Correct.
Not without help.
Correct.
So that was one of the key things that Thomas mentioned about, how PTSD can affect autistic people. So there's an effect on the hyperfixation. There's also an effect on, anxiety and our senses, because those are going to be heightened now after the traumatic event in question. They're going to be more aware than how they usually were. It'll be more easy to get surprised or like startled, shocked, or like afraid of something. Those feelings, those senses are going to be amplified even more.
Yeah, so that's pretty much, with the autism and CPTSD, that's where they're all blending in. Repetition of the experience constitutes a complex trauma.
There was one other thing that I just realized that could also be affected. Remember earlier when we were talking about PTSD and you were talking about intrusive thoughts or nightmares?
You guys get them automatically with autism, though.
Well, that's the thing is with nightmares with autistic people or even neurotypical people is that they're usually random. Like there may be a cause for it, but it's not like the same thing over and over again. But what I just remembered, if you recall, recently I did an autism video about how to help autistic people get better sleep. And some of the things that I mentioned in terms of like the causes for autistic people having trouble with sleeping could be because of sensory issues, like maybe there's too much going on in the senses, or stress and anxiety. That can also affect how an autistic person can get more sleep or less sleep. But with the intrusive thoughts and the nightmares and the hyperfixation on the traumatic event, this could also hinder their sleep as well.
Absolutely.
Because with the consistent nightmares, it's going to make it harder for someone to go to sleep. Like, if I had a nightmare, I don't want to go back to sleep for the rest of the night because I don't want to go into the nightmare again. So, like, there's that issue. There's also, like, the heightened anxiety, the heightened senses. All of this can affect their ability to sleep, which in turn will also affect their day-to-day functions.
That's right. So now let's start looking at some of the differences between the two. So as we already said, autism is a neurodevelopmental disorder. You're born with it. It's part of, as you're in utero, that the way your brain is working, okay? It'll affect the development of brain and nervous system, as I said. Typically, it's caught in early childhood, and it will be there the entire life. CPT, on the other hand, is a mental health condition.
CPTSD.
I'm sorry, you're right. CPTSD, a lot of letters. These are acquired symptoms. They often show up later in life, okay? They can emerge at any point in time in a person's life. And just because, so here we have event, here we have diagnosis PTSD, here we get diagnosis CPTSD, here we have life just happening fine, no problem, and then here we go again. So it can go on like that. CPTSD and PTSD is not necessarily a lifelong diagnosis. The potential's there, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be. It doesn't let up. Okay, autism never lets up. It is what it is. It's going to be like that the way it is.
Well, the other thing is autism is consistent and predictable in terms of
which this is not.
Right. So like, if it's the lights are too bright or the music's too loud or there's too many people,
always going to be like that.
Right. So with autistic people in general, like it can be simple to predict. Well, should I say simple or easy? It's more likely that you'll spot the sources of the problem with autistic people in general if you know what to look for. But with PTSD, CPTSD, not so much.
Right. Okay. And the symptoms actually of PTSD and CPTSD can, over a period of time, lessen to the point where they actually no longer meet the diagnosis criteria. So there's a little ray of sunshine on that one, potentially. But once autistic, always autistic.
Yeah.
Okay. So now let's go ahead and start talking about treatments.
Now, before we get into treatments, there are two things that I want to mention. First was the other thing that another viewer... Anyway. First thing was another thing that a viewer wanted me to talk about was what they refer to as a trauma snowball effect. Now, I looked it up a little bit. I'm not really sure if that's an actual term or not, but... it follows the same principle as a snowball effect in general, where it's like it starts out with something small, but when it's not addressed or something keeps building on top of it, it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger and harder to control. So, like, let's say, going back to my retail job, like, let's say there was this one customer that was pretty bad. Okay, so one customer is bad, I can shake that off. But then it's like again and again and again and again. It just keeps building up like a series of events, like domino effect. And just keeps getting worse and worse if I don't, really address the issue, if I don't take time to myself or like talk to someone about it. Or it could be that another issue is like there was someone that was like really, really bad. Like someone was like really bad, maybe a little out of control. And this bad feeling like sticks with me for a long time and I'm not addressing it. And the longer you let this go unaddressed, the worse that it can get. So like my dad always says, early intervention is key. If you stop the snowball from getting bigger and bigger in the first place, the better off you'll be. Whereas if you don't address them, like maybe some smaller issues that are related to the trauma or like some bad habits that just get worse and worse, trauma or otherwise, if you don't address these issues, be it either small bad habits or like a traumatic event that happens, the longer it goes unaddressed, the worse that it will get. So that's the first thing to mention, like the snowball effect. Like you want to get on it right away and stop that snowball from getting any bigger. Otherwise, it's going to be harder to control. You may lose control of your actions, or the situation could get, worse when it doesn't need to get worse. So early intervention is key.
And the thing, Stephen, that everybody needs to understand, that what he's describing, this snowball effect, that's not only for people with autism. It's not only for people with PTSD. Any of us, in our generation, we used to call that the pee in the mattress. Something's bothering you. Take care of it while it's still a small problem. Don't wait until it's time to hit that red button.
Yeah, don't wait until it becomes too big to handle on your own. Like,
correct.
If there's a problem, address it right away. That's what I like to do. The other thing that's important to mention, there is a difference between treatment and cure.
Correct.
Now, what we're going over is some of the things we're going over are treatments. To cure something is to fix the problem forever, make the problem go away. With treatment, you're not necessarily making a problem go away for good or making a situation go away for good, but rather you're learning how to cope, live with it better. So the reason I say is because there is no cure, there's absolutely no cure for autism. There is no cure for PTSD. There are treatments, but there are no cures. So just so we understand the difference between the two.
So now let's focus more on the autism first, then we'll go to the PTSD. So with autism, the most widely spread treatment that has proven itself to be effective is psychotherapy, or what we call talk therapy. Okay, CBD, cognitive behavioral.
Cognitive behavioral therapy.
I'm sorry.
I actually did a little bit of research on CPT, and it's proven to be very effective.
Absolutely. So the goal with these treatments, all of them, is to help the individual with autism and help them with their sense of self and mental health. Okay? We're looking at their anxiety, we're looking at their depression, we're looking at teaching them the coping skills, all the alternate paths to approach something that for whatever reason they can't take the direct path, so now we're going to give them another path. Okay,
so basically we're trying to get rid of like the bad habits that are causing the problems and replace them with better ones.
Correct. So we're going to help the individual to recognize the unhelpful or harmful patterns of their thinking or their behaviors, i.e. negative beliefs about oneself. We want to replace them with supportive alternatives, recognize their emotions, and help them develop the coping skills, navigating those social situations. And that's something actually I use in my practice, Stephen. When people come to me to become certified nursing assistants, they come with all those behaviors. And so I've actually had some students where I make them come in the morning and come to class. Before they start anything, they have to tell me 2 good things about themselves.
Oh, okay.
And it can't be the same 2 things every day. They have to give me 2 new things. And interestingly enough, when these people get ready to go for the state board, I repeated this to them so many times that they automatically come to me. Miss Ellen, I'm beautiful today and I'm going to pass my CNA exam. And I'm like, okay, now you go make me proud. And interestingly enough, they'll come back and the words that come back to me, I made you proud, Miss Ellen. Okay? What I did was I took their negative feelings. 'Cause I've had some people that came to me that were part of a domestic abuse situation, okay, or some other traumatic thing, and I'm taking their negative stuff and I'm practicing with them and rehearsing with them. Let's have something positive, okay? Now, I'm not negating whatever it is that happened, but what I'm doing is I'm teaching a different road. There was Walt Whitman was a very famous poet, and he wrote a poem about 2 roads and I took the less traveled.
So what you're mentioning is, and this is very important to keep in mind, is that with these treatments, we are not ignoring the problem. We are addressing the problem.
Absolutely.
We're not saying to pretend this never happened, because it did happen. What we're saying is like to change the mindset in terms of like, instead of thinking bad about yourself, what are some good things about yourself?
What are some alternatives?
Right. So
absolutely.
it's a way of addressing the problem, but not ignoring it.
Right. Now, some other things that we can do are what we call accommodations. And, our society is getting better about that. Back when Stephen was little, to get an accommodation, and really he didn't need that much, but just trying to get it put on the books and have people do it, it was a struggle in the beginning. Today, we're used to doing accommodations, okay? So that's where we're going to support their identity. We're going to advocate for whatever it is they need. It could be an adjustment in the work schedule. It could be the environment. It could be the workplace things like the lighting, sounds, something, even, believe it or not, a chair. The difference in a chair and the seating can help them, okay? The last thing that we want to bring up is medications, because these people truly do have anxiety and depression. We cannot negate it. We cannot ignore it. If it's there, it has to get treated, not cured.
One thing I have to mention about medications, whether you're autistic or if you're going through PTSD or CPTSD or any trauma, please, please,
See your doctor.
Yes, absolutely, please. Because, like, what we're giving you is just, like, basic advice. This is a starting point. This is not the end-all, be-all.
This is the beginning.
So, like, you know, like, we're giving you advice, but please talk to a medical professional about it before you do anything medication-wise, because some medications have certain side effects, and depending on what you're doing, you could end up doing more bad than good.
Right. So now let's go to the CPTSD. Again, psychotherapy, just the same thing like I told you what we do with the people on the spectrum or autism.
There's psychotherapy, and there's also, like, couldn't you also apply CBT to that as well? Because if you recall, those deal with, you know, the mental health, the sense of self, and, you know, anxiety problems. 3 key things that both PTSD and autism can affect.
Well, you're going to find that all 4 of the things that I listed for autism are the same thing that I'm going to list for PTSD, except one thing that we'll do with CPTSD that we don't do in autism, because for you guys it becomes more distracting and more distressing, is what's called eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy. Now, someone on the
that's going to be a problem.
Someone on the spectrum, you're going to make them insane because, number one, eye contact for them. Remember, go back to the very first of this video. Socialization skills. Stephen, when he was younger, one time we were doing a lecture and somebody asked us, well, why is it my child will never look at me when I'm talking to him? And Stephen actually was about 5 years old, and your answer to that person was?
I can either look at you or I can listen to you, but I can't do both. Now,
why couldn't you do both, Stephen? Do you remember why?
Because it'd be too much to focus.
Your face was my face was distracting you, you said.
Well, there's also, there is that, but I did a video on this a while back in terms of, like, why autistic people may struggle with eye contact. There's the matter of, like, so much going on in the face. There's also the matter of, like, constantly focusing on one point for an extended period of time. And it's such, like, a small object right there.
And it's exhausting.
Right. Since you're focusing on a small object instead of, like, something big, then it can cause problems, and that can raise anxiety. So, like, the eye movement therapy might not work so well for autistic people.
But so that is one of the treatments that is available for the PTSD. Again, probably not a good plan for someone on the spectrum. Okay? So, and again, we talk about medications. Oh, there's that lovely light again. I think God's blessing us.
I swear, the monitor has a mind of its own.
It really does. And we're going to accommodate that, and we're going to be okay. Okay. And again, the accommodations, flexible schedule, maybe even remote work options, because for some people, like for Stephen, in his office here, in his room, he has a setup. He knows where everything, and he's comfortable, and he can be very productive. But if he had to do the same job on his other job, with all the commotion and the different setup and the different other things going on, he wouldn't be able to accomplish the same thing.
And the thing is, like, remote jobs have been on the rise for, like, the past few years, because not only are they able to do the job, but there's also this level of flexibility. Like you said, there's a controlled environment where everything I have is right here, and I can do it right here. But there's also, like, the matter of avoiding issues that can cause a rise in anxiety. There could be, like, removal of any unknown factors or unforeseen elements that could appear.
Or it could be the stress even of having to drive yourself or take yourself to a job location. Maybe the driving itself can be stressful, someone on the spectrum, or have somebody who's PTSD who had an accident. So
yeah, because believe it or not, there are some people out there that
don't drive.
That don't drive. They either don't know how to drive or they don't want to because it's too stressful.
Correct.
It does happen.
There we go. So, okay, so now we've described autism. We've described PTSD, CPTSD. We talked about snowball effect. And now we've given you some options in terms of treatments. Remember, there's no cure for either of these. And so at this point, the next thing we would need to know is, what other questions do you have for Stephen or myself?
Yeah, so if, like, there's only so much we could fit into this video, despite how long it's been.
Mm-hmm.
There's only so much we could fit in. So, like, if you have any particular questions to ask us, like, maybe there was something we didn't address, or maybe there's something you want to know more about, you can either let us know in the comments section below, or if you want to keep it private, you can email it to me at toastamac@gmail.com, and Mom and I will try to address it.
Mm-hmm.
I will say one thing, though. If the comment or question has something to do with a traumatic experience that you yourself went through or someone you know went through, I would highly advise that you keep that between you and a medical professional.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Mom has a lot of experience in the medical field, but at the same time, we can't answer everything for you. It's like we can only do so much, and the last thing we want to do is give you advice that may either not work or could make something worse.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we don't want to do that. So, like, if it's like questions regards to, like, trauma or PTSD or how PTSD could affect autistic people,
or medications.
Yeah, if it's generalized questions that are not too specific, we can do our best to help you. But if it's very specific to yourself or someone you know, I would highly recommend keep that between you and your medical professional, because, like, even for someone like me that posts content online, there has to be this sense of privacy where it's like, just because you can post
doesn't mean you should share it.
Yeah, just because you can doesn't mean you should, and it doesn't mean you don't have to. Do not feel forced to share your own experience. You can keep that to yourself or keep that to a medical professional. You don't need to have that out in the open.
The idea behind all this, folks, is, and we see this all the time, and as a nurse, I see it all the time, is people that are truly, they got a lot of goodness in their heart. They're suffering because they don't know how to help their child. Their son or their daughter is going through something, and they're like, please, somebody out there, help me. Here's the problem. When you put it out on that World Wide Web, everybody can look at it, and here's the issue.
Everybody can give their opinion.
And not all of them, and I'm not saying that people are going out there on purpose to say things to lead you wrong. I'm going to go with that they mean it with a good heart, but here's the problem.
Yeah, it's like they
don't have the training.
Right. They may have good intentions, but they don't have the training, or they don't have the experience.
Right.
And that training and experience can change everything.
And that's why you need to speak with your doctors. You need to speak with your therapist. Again, we will help you with what we can, but if there's something that critical going on, those phone calls need to go to those doctors and those therapists. And I appreciate, guys, today getting a hold of a therapist or a doctor can be exasperating because everybody's so busy. There's just not enough of us to go around.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, Stephen, you and I did a video a couple of years ago about how to approach a doctor's office or a therapist's office when you needed to emphasize something. And, so get a paper.
Actually, I don't think we did.
We did. Yeah, we did do something about that. We'll have to look for it. But the idea being that is, if you're going through a situation, so let me give you an example. So let's say that Stephen has decided that he's going to start headbanging. Don't. But he's decided he's going to do that. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to help? If I put it out on the World Wide Web, you're going to get some people who say, oh my God, take him to the emergency room. Then you're going to have some people who say, well, just put a helmet on him. And then there's going to be others who say, well, that's really funny. Why don't you just videotape it? Okay?
It's like they don't understand. Right. Like they may have seen it once or twice, but they don't understand because they didn't experience it.
Exactly. So get a piece of paper and write down, dear doctor, these are the things my child's doing. 1, 2, 3, A, B, C, and this is what I need help with. What that's going to do, it's going to help the doctor with his time management or her time management. Same thing with the therapist. It's going to let them know specifically what you're looking for. And you'll find that the responses and the help you get will be far more specific and far more in tune to what you're looking for.
So the more information you can give them, the better.
The better, absolutely. Okay?
Right. So that's pretty much it. I know this has been a much longer video than usual, but this is not really, it's not really a topic that we can compress to like a 10 to 12 minute video. It's like when you go into a topic like this, you need to see the bigger picture, not just like a brief explanation. So I want to thank you all for watching this video. I know it's been a long one, but we hope this video helps out in some way, shape, or form, you know? So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here. Thank you very much for watching. Mom, thank you for your input and your expertise on the matter.
Thank you.
And of course, I always love having you in these videos.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate the invite.
So, thank you for watching. I hope you have a good weekend. And until the next video or live stream,
bye.
See you later.